Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today morning. We will begin momentarily. If you can just wait for 2 minutes, and we will start the webinar shortly. Thank you. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Apologies for the minor uh, delay. We had some technical difficulties, so we are glad to see everyone who's made it for this morning's webinar. So my name is Jason John, and I work as the technical engineer for the Emirates Green Building Council. And today we are very excited to share with you the results from our latest publication, the Advancing Deep Retrofits in the UAE study. The Deep Retrofit study was conducted to explore region-specific solutions and approaches to retrofitting buildings that go beyond current renovation programs and which achieve greater energy and financial savings. Today, for the first time, we will be sharing you the findings, results, and the market readiness and the challenges and opportunities that we have discovered from conducting this study. Today, you will also see our panelists who will be joining us, and they come from a wide variety of sectors, and we are glad to have their participation today. So, just before we begin, there's a bit of housekeeping, and we will just quickly go through them. So for those of you who are joining us for the first time and are using this platform for the first time, you'll see your control panels on your right hand of the screen. During the entirety of this webinar, there will be no verbal questions. So if you have any questions that arise during this webinar, please type them in your questions area on the right hand side. And our team here at the Emirates Green Building Council will be monitoring those questions. We'll answer them where we can if it's something straightforward, or if it's a question that you would directly like to ask the speaker, the presenter, or the panelists, then you can make do with that capabilities as well. And finally, as we move on from the webinar, you'll see the recording will be shared with you after the event. So once the webinar closes, you'll receive an email with the recording of the presentation. And I also kindly ask you to complete the survey that you receive as you exit the webinar. This helps to inform us for future events and webinars that we will be running. And finally, follow EmiratesGBC on social media and post using the hashtags EGBC webinars. So with this, I would like to start our webinar today officially, and I would like to welcome His Excellency, Chairman of the Emirates Green Building Council, to give the opening remarks. So thank you everyone for joining us, and Dr. Ali. Dr. Ali, can you check if your microphone is unmuted? Apologies, everyone. I think we're experiencing a few technical difficulties. Please bear with us for 2 minutes. Okay, it seems that we have temporarily lost His Excellency in the webinar. He will be joining us later. So, Matt, can you continue with the presentations, and we will ask Dr. Ali to join us later.
Hi, Jason. Can you hear me, first of all?
Yes, we can hear you, Matt. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We're very pleased to be with you today with the launch of our Advancing Deep Retrofits study. At first, I would like to thank all the participants in the Deep Retrofit study, and many thanks to our sponsors, today's sponsors, Danfoss, Saint Gobain, and Majid Al Futtaim. Aligned with the objectives of our energy efficiency program, the Emirates Green Building Council conducted a study on deep retrofits to understand the market awareness and capabilities, as well as to identify the challenges and opportunities for deep building retrofits. The study also aims to explore solutions for deep building retrofits and explore approaches and incentives as well, and to support the government in developing roadmaps towards the decarbonization of the built environment. As defined by several references, a deep building retrofit is a whole building analysis, where the project or the building is considered as a single integrated system rather than several standalone systems. The site energy use intensity, kilowatt hours per meter squared, in a deep retrofit should be reduced by at least 50% compared to the baseline. This can be achieved using implementing energy efficiency measures, energy conservation measures, and before installing renewable energy systems. Here are some examples of deep retrofit measures. Measures that are related to the building envelope include external insulation, coating, airtight envelope, high performance windows, and window shadings. There are many measures as well that are related to the HVAC system, such as efficient air conditioning system, controls, building management system, energy management system, as well as efficient appliances, efficient lighting, efficient water heaters, in addition to solar water heaters and PV panels. Water performance should be also considered in deep retrofits by installing efficient water fixtures and efficient irrigation systems. In September 2019, we've kicked off the deep retrofit study with an event, a focus day at Dubai Chamber, which addressed the importance and the definition of deep retrofits in the UAE. Alongside with the event, we ran a survey to understand and evaluate the feasibility of deep retrofits in the UAE. Following that, we've conducted an in-depth research and literature review around this topic. And we've also conducted two surveys, a market research survey and a developers survey. The market research survey was open to responses from different stakeholders in the retrofit market. However, the developer survey was only open for UAE developers to help capture their views and opinions. After data collection, the answers from the surveys were verified, validated, and analyzed, with key findings and recommendations reported in the Advancing Deep Retrofits report, which we're launching today. 95 building experts participated in the market survey and the developers survey. The market survey respondents consisted of 19 consultants, 18 government agencies, 16 ESCO companies, 10 suppliers and manufacturers, 9 construction and engineering companies, 4 developers and building owners, and 4 others. While the developer survey respondents consisted of 14 UAE developers in the UAE. The market survey asked about the highest energy savings achieved by a retrofit project, the maximum savings achieved. As illustrated in the bar chart, you can see that 37% of the survey responses believe that the maximum savings or the highest savings achieved in a project, in a retrofit project in the UAE, is between 31 and 40%, while 21% of the responses believe that the maximum savings are between 21 to 30%. However, based on our correspondence with leading ESCO companies in the UAE, the highest achieved savings in the projects of these ESCOs are between 45% and 50%, if only energy efficiency measures and energy conservation measures were considered. Having said that, it is logical to conclude that reaching up to 50% energy savings in a building retrofit project is possible without the use of renewable energy. It was also observed that there is no common standard used for reporting energy savings in the UAE market. Some retrofit projects include renewable energy generation as part of the reported savings, some don't. Some project teams report the energy savings along with a list of implemented measures, whereas others only report the total savings or even cost savings only without specifying the measures. Moreover, some project teams report a very high percentage of energy savings, up to 80% or 90%, just from one implemented energy efficiency measure or energy conservation measure, which leads to a confusion or a misconception that this project has achieved the reported savings as compared to the total energy consumption of the building. Therefore, we recommend to follow the International Performance Measurement and Verification Protocol when calculating and reporting savings, and following the formula, savings equals to the baseline energy minus reported energy plus or minus adjustments which are based on the project or the building conditions and operations. Emirates Green Building Council also recommends achieving deep retrofits and targeting up to 50% on-site energy use by at first reducing energy demand, then implementing energy efficiency and energy conservation measures before implementing or installing on-site renewable energy generation. The 50% energy saving target is a realistic target specifically for poor performing projects, as indicated by Emirates Green Building Council benchmarking reports, where there is a huge difference between poor performers and the best performers. Poor performers actually consume up to 2 to 3 times more energy compared to the best performers. It is also recommended to increase awareness about retrofit projects by showcasing more publicly available information about these retrofit projects, such as the total energy savings percentage, either in energy or in cost, as well as the list of implemented measures considered for the project. To understand the feasibility of deep retrofits in the UAE, the market survey also asked the building experts, to answer questions like, do you agree that deep retrofits are possible? Is there sufficient technology in the market that can support deep retrofitting? Is there a greater need for technical knowledge and experience for deep retrofit to be delivered successfully? And what is the expected payback period for deep retrofits in the UAE? The majority of the market survey respondents and the developers agree that deep retrofits are possible, agree that achieving 50% or more savings is possible in the UAE. 70% of the market survey responses agree that there is sufficient technology currently available in the market to support deep retrofitting. However, 60% of the market survey respondents expressed their concern and expressed there's a greater need for technical knowledge and expertise for deep retrofits, which raises questions about the qualifications of skilled professionals in the retrofit market around the topic of deep retrofitting. At last, almost half of the respondents agree that deep retrofits are expected to have a payback period of 6 to 10 years. As you know, the UAE retrofit programs are voluntary, and many experts believe that these programs should be mandated by the government to help accelerate the retrofit market. In fact, 90% of the participating ESCOs, consultants, suppliers, and manufacturers believe that deep retrofits should be mandated and call the government to mandate deep retrofits. However, only 15% of developers, of the participating developers, believe that deep retrofits should be mandated. On the other hand, 45%, almost half of the developers, believe that the government can mandate the implementation of energy labeling scheme or a performance certificate to help accelerate the retrofit market. Additionally, 35% of the participating developers prefer to keep the retrofit program voluntary, but with providing more incentives instead. The market survey also asked about the biggest challenges to deep retrofits in the UAE market. The top 5 challenges are lack of landlord interest, lack of financial incentives, low tariff rates, high capital investments of deep retrofits, and lack of government initiatives. However, for ESCOs in particular, they ranked lack of government initiatives as, they gave it a higher rank, while government highlighted the lack of experience, of technical expertise, as one of the top 5 challenges to deep retrofits in the market. On the other hand, developers believe that disrupting the operations of buildings during a deep retrofit is the biggest challenge. We've also asked the experts to provide some suggestions of incentives that can advance the depth and the breadth of deep retrofits. The suggested incentives were classified into building performance incentives, the incentives related to the building performance, and financial incentives. The building performance incentives, the suggested building performance incentives include introducing an existing building rating scheme, linking building performance to rental costs, and introducing time of use or dynamic tariffs. Some examples of the financial incentives include green loans, tax rebates, offering on-bill financing, offering incentives to both public and private sectors to invest into energy efficiency related projects. As a conclusion, the study showed a positive position towards deep retrofitting in the market. The majority of the respondents agree that deep retrofitting is achievable with an acceptable payback period using the current technologies in the market. While most of the private sector agree that retrofits should be mandated, developers prefer mandating an energy labeling scheme or keeping the retrofit programs voluntary with more financial incentives developed. The top 3 challenges, as I mentioned, are lack of landlord interest, lack of financial incentives, and low tariff rates. Emirates Green Building Council believes that achieving 50% on-site energy use reduction is achievable specifically for the poor performing projects with the support of regulations and incentives. At last, we invite all stakeholders from the private sector and the public sector to progress towards deep retrofitting in order to achieve the net zero carbon goals by 2050. Thank you. If you have any questions about the study, please feel free to add these questions in the Q&A section.
Thank you, Maj, for the wonderful presentation. It's really exciting to see all these results as you have shown us. We'll wait maybe a minute or two to see if we get any more questions that come along. So I would like to remind the audience again, if you have any questions, please submit your questions on the questions chat box on your right hand side. So one of the questions that we're getting a lot of questions, Maj. Congrats. So one of the first questions I suppose we'll ask is what are the technical challenges for deep retrofit?
I think we need to leave this question to the
panelists.
Address this question with the panel.
Perfect. There's another question on, did you specify the type of building while you conducted this study?
We haven't specified or had a question about the type of buildings for retrofitting, but there are certain building types that consume more than others. If you look at malls, there's higher consumption, for example, than residential, maybe resorts more than hotels. So I think this is another step that the government can do, which specifying which building typologies we need to focus on at first with retrofitting to achieve the highest savings.
Perfect. We have another question that just came in. I think it's an interesting question. I believe both of us can answer this, but I'll ask it anyway. So what is the feedback on government agencies on low tariff rates or lack of incentives? With regards to the low tariff rates, I think it's more addressed on the side that the respondents that we've got was not representative of the entirety of UAE, so we couldn't make any sort of conclusion on that sort of finding. And the lack of incentives, we'll be talking a bit more on that on the panel side of things as well. So thank you for those questions. So another question, and I think we're getting a lot of questions. We'll answer a lot of these questions online, so I apologize if we can't go through all of them at this moment, but I'm just going through some of them right now. There's a question from Mr. Khair, which is, what would be the key action to enhancing landlord interest in applying retrofitting? So what do you think on that?
I'm gonna also give this question to
the panel.
Leslie, one of our developers. I think she can answer better than me on the developers or the owners' point of view.
Perfect.
But there's also a lot of interesting results that the participants, the attendees can check by downloading the report and then downloading the appendix.
Definitely. So just before I introduce, I believe we also have His Excellency Ali back on the call as well, so he can deliver his address to everyone. So for everyone who's interested in accessing the report, please go to EmiratesGBC publications, and you can see the publication has been added under the EmiratesGBC publications tab, and the report itself is available in both Arabic and English. So now let us like to introduce His Excellency Ali. Ali, can you hear us?
Good morning, I can hear you. Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you everyone for attending. I can't switch on the camera. I'm facing technical difficulties logging in. We have switched and migrated to an IT company called Moro, so we are facing some technical difficulties. I apologize for that. I still cannot, no one can see me via the camera, the webcam, but if you can hear my voice.
We can hear you perfectly.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Well, assalamu alaikum everyone. Good morning, and thank you for being with us today, and welcome ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor for us at Emirates Green Building Council to present to you the findings of our most recent study. Majid, of course, presented the Advancing Deep Retrofits in the UAE. Of course, I would like to thank Majid Al Futtaim, Danfoss, and Saint Gobain for being actively involved with this project, and without them, this study would have not been possible, of course, without their contributions. Today, of course, Majid has unveiled the findings of the study, and of course, it is very relevant and important to our nation's goal for sustainable development. We have seen our leaders, we have witnessed that they are taking great stride to build the UAE to become as one of the most sustainable countries in the world. And of course, they have set a clear roadmap for us to achieve a net zero carbon buildings by 2050. And this is already tied with the leadership's vision to prepare for the next 50 years. Of course, we are proud of the UAE's being the first one or among the first national governments to announce its commitment to zero carbon buildings for all initiative, a multi-partner global initiative led by the World Resources Institute and endorsed by the UN Secretary General. At EmiratesGBC, at Emirates Green Building Council, our aim is to support the UAE and the wider MENA region for a cleaner and greener tomorrow. The study that was shared with you today by Majid, we attempted to learn more about the market sentiment when it comes to deep retrofits, the challenges various stakeholders face, as well as the expectations in terms of incentives and benefits. The results of this study highlighted to you today, and the achievements we have made in retrofitting, but also the study points out as well, the work that still has to be done. One of the most important findings that the study outlined is the fact that the long-term value of deep retrofit, which aims for 50% on-site energy use reduction, outpaces the initial cost when executed effectively. This means that we shouldn't look at deep retrofits from long-term perspective of achieving higher financial savings. The study also identified that the majority of our building industry stakeholders agree to the fact that deep retrofits are achievable in the UAE with an acceptable payback period using the current technologies available. There are challenges such as lack of landlord interest, limited financial incentives, and low tariff rates. However, when we weigh the challenges against the long-term benefits, the results are very positive and work in the favor of the industry, the government, as well as the general public. A huge amount of efforts is needed from the building and construction sectors to help support the UAE in decarbonizing its existing building stock. With forms such as this, we are urging all stakeholders to progress towards deep retrofit and reap the benefits it offers. In the journey forward, the private sector also must work closely with the public sector for long-term sustainable transformation. Our aim at EmiratesGBC is to bridge the information gap among various stakeholders, better understand the current situation, and help achieve the government's vision through the support of all stakeholders. Majid has presented the study. Majid is the technical manager of Emirates Green Building Council, who has taken you through the study and the results. I thank him, and I thank you all for being with us today and being part of the sustainability journey with us. Thank you very much, and thank you for attending this webinar.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for this wonderful address that you have given. And it really shows to show that how much we've progressed as a country, as in the UAE, in terms of meeting our targets, in terms of meeting the retrofit targets that we've put in different emirates, but also the work that is needed to be done for the future. So with this in mind, I would like to now move on to our panel discussion that we will be having. So I will ask the panelists to join us on screen today, and I will introduce every one of them. So we will start with Graham Sims. So Graham Sims is the Executive Director of Dubai's Electricity and Water Regulator, the RSB. An economist by background, he has over 25 years experience of electricity and water industries gained in the UK and the UAE. He is a graduate of Oxford University and began his career with the Boston Consulting Group. He was also the Deputy Director General at UK's Office of Electricity Regulation, where he was responsible for the electricity industry in Scotland. From there, he moved to Abu Dhabi to establish the Emirates Water and Electricity Regulatory Body, acting as its first Director General. So welcome, Graham. Next, we have Afra Alowais, who is the Chief Efficientology Officer at the Sharjah Electricity and Water Authority. Afra leads the Energy Management and Audit Department of SEWA. She created the SEWA Sustainability Pathway as a permanent high-impact installation in SEWA to illustrate the organization's vision. Since 2018, she has championed the Building Retrofit program, targeting an average reduction of 30% in each premise, which is an initiative to advance the position of Sharjah as a city of conservation. The title of Chief Efficientology Officer was bestowed to her in recognition of a commitment to develop green growth. Welcome, Afra. Next, we have Ismail Otsen. Ismail Otsen is the Sales Director in Danfoss Heating Segment, a division of Danfoss which focuses on advanced HVAC component systems delivering comfort and energy efficiency in residential commercial buildings, as well as enhanced performance in district energy networks. Sirhan is currently responsible for the Middle East and Africa region, where he has 15 years of experience in heating and cooling applications. In Danfoss, he has held various positions in technical support and sales in various regions, and he is presently located in Dubai. Welcome, Ismail. Next, I would like to introduce Nazli Asatolapur, who is the Sustainability Manager at Majid Al Futtaim Holding. In her current role, Nazli is responsible for implementing the group-wide sustainability strategy of Majid Al Futtaim. She brings over 13 years of experience in sustainable real estate and corporate sustainability, and one of her top priorities is to develop and drive the net positive sustainability strategy across the company's different business units. She joined in 2016 as the Green Building Manager for Majid Al Futtaim Properties, where she played an important role in driving sustainable real estate practices across the business. Welcome, Nazli. And finally, we have Nada Chami, who is the Business Development Manager of Saint Gobain. She has worked with Saint Gobain for the last 10 years with an expertise in sustainable construction and building science. She holds a mechanical engineering degree and has a PhD in energy efficiency and building installation from Mainz Paris Tech. She works on promoting the advancement of sustainable construction in the region with a focus on health, safety, and well-being. She works closely with academia, government, and construction key stakeholders to develop collaborative solutions and initiatives. And she is also an active board member of the Emirates Green Building Council. So I would like to take this time, welcome everyone to the panel. Thank you for your time and joining us today. So with the results that we've seen, I would like to start with our first question that we have for the panelists. So we've seen from the findings that 84% of the respondents and 64% of the developers agree that deep retrofits are achievable in the UAE. This is also supported by 70% of the respondents that believe that there is sufficient technology in the market to achieve this. So from your work experience and your backgrounds, what do these results mean for you? And do you believe that the market is mature enough to progress towards deep retrofits? So we'll start with Graham. Are you still muted, is it? Hold on. Okay, you should be unmuted.
Yeah, I think I'm unmuted now. Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you very much. And thanks to GBC for organizing the webinar, indeed for launching this study, which I think is a really valuable contribution to an aspect of the retrofit market that I don't think we've previously explored in any detail. I'd say overall, I'm encouraged by the results. I was one of the people who took part in the survey, and we've got some limited experience of deep retrofits from the data that we collect from ESCOs each year. And we shouldn't be any doubt that achieving a 50% plus reduction in energy use is going to be challenging. It won't be appropriate for every building. And I expect later on we'll come on to talk about what government might play. But if I think about the market, in other words, the suppliers and the customers, I guess I'd say for the suppliers, one of the things I'd like to see is that when they are working with clients and identifying the scope for reductions, they go all the way to consider what might be the opportunity for a deep retrofit. I don't know whether energy audit always go so far as to identify the full scope for energy reduction. I think that's clients need to be presented with that option. It won't necessarily be the option that they wish to choose or can choose, but they're not really going to choose that option unless someone demonstrates to them that it might be achievable for their building. And I think on the client side, one of the challenges which was identified in the study, which Majid has talked about, is the operational challenges associated with a deep retrofit. Inevitably, the deeper the retrofit, the more you are in effect interfering with the day-to-day operation of a building. If you start to change out windows, well, the room in which the window is located cannot be used for the duration of that exercise. So it probably requires a good deal of planning on behalf of the client to work out, what are those opportunities and can they realistically take a facility out of service, or at least stage by stage. And maybe the last thing I wanted to mention, which wasn't touched upon directly, is the role that district cooling retrofits might be able to play in this. We know from the data we've collected that you can achieve something like a 1/3 energy reduction almost straight away if you imagine switching from the sort of air-cooled chillers that many buildings have to the water-cooled chillers employed by district cooling. And the advantage you have with an existing building is, because it will be in service for some time, you have a much better understanding of its cooling needs. And taken together with a retrofit project which is designed to bring down the overall cooling requirement, I think you might find you can get a long way towards that sort of 50% target through that combination. And the other advantage you may have with district cooling retrofits is it overcomes some of the financing challenges, because typically what you do is, instead of having to invest the capital directly, you enter into a longer term agreement for your cooling service. So I think if we add that to the sort of suite of opportunities that there are and technologies that are available, then I think that, that again, it won't be appropriate for all buildings, but I think there'll be many cases for mature buildings that could benefit from that as well.
Fantastic. Thank you, Graham, for that wonderful insight. Afra, the same question. So what do these results mean for you in terms of the market?
Good morning to you all, and thanks for having me today in this webinar. I'm glad to join you today. So replying on your statement that have been mentioned earlier, I believe that yes, the market is mature to progress towards deep retrofit. However, and in my opinion, I believe that the customer here is a key to implement the deep retrofit project. Which means that even if we have the technology, we have the solution, we have the supplier available in the market, there should be other elements that will support moving forward. And I'll discuss some of those details later. Thank you.
Perfect. Ismail, from your experience, what do you think? Is the market mature enough? One second, we still cannot hear you.
Yeah, you should hear me now, I guess.
Okay, perfect.
Specifically talking about UAE, actually, I think we believe we really reached quite a mature level, because the mature definition of mature level is basically the intention from the end users, capable or competent companies and people, and supply of right products and acceptance of these products. And when I look at it compared to 10 years ago, I think it's much more available here. There are lots of companies. I mean, we listened, for instance, here from the panelist Majid Al Futtaim, CEO last year in a green building event, that they want to go for zero emission. They have this objective, and there are other companies and entities wants to do that. So there is intention. In addition to this, we are able to find the right suppliers in the market to do the right stuff, and we have the right retrofit companies, because only the suppliers like Danfoss, for instance, will not be enough for it, because all of us will be taking a part of the system. But there should be someone actually merging or connecting these Lego pieces to each other and making a nice castle with that, right? So, and we can see these companies actively and ambitiously in the market. So they will be able to offer. So I believe that we have the potential, the maturity level, and this, of course, it's motivating that energy prices are increasing, and the consumption started to be this energy consumption started to be a substantial expense of the entities. So what that can be rectified and bring to a level that everyone can benefit from this. And I agree with Graham that there are different parts of it, and there are difficulties. There are things easy to do, there are difficult things to do. However, by not to evaluate, when it just lie on the table and evaluate, and yes, some elements can be still staying on the table and some can be removed. But for sure, there will be lots of buildings that work to not only the retrofit, deep retrofit initiatives will be beneficial for the end user of the building.
Fantastic answer. Thank you so much, Ismail. Nazli, from your viewpoint as a developer, what do these results mean for you?
So we think that definitely is doable, especially at recent years. There has been a great improvement in retrofitting options. But in general, I think if we want to do it in any meaningful manner, we need to have governmental support, such as policies, codes, regulations. We need financial incentives through banks and financial institutes. In addition to that, I think it's very important to have good examples, good case studies based in the region rather than having case studies coming from EU or US. So that as a sustainability practitioner, when I go to our leadership or our commercial team, I can show them how in real life retrofit can enhance the how do you call it? Can have financial improvement as well as environmental. And this is something that we need anyway, as Majid mentioned, we need it if we want to go for advancing net zero by 2050. That's the only way to do it. Thank you.
Fantastic. And Nada, from your viewpoint, what do you think of these results?
Yeah, so first, good morning, everyone. I'm happy to be here. So first, I think that the survey findings are very promising, and this is a great start to have all the decision makers aware and on board. What triggered the worldwide and the UAE focus on deep retrofit is definitely the 2050 carbon neutrality targets. So as we all know, buildings are the biggest contributor to climate change, and this makes energy efficiency a crucial step, in order to achieve the long sustainability goal that we want. So the first step is to acknowledge that there is a need for deep retrofit and to believe that is achievable. But the second step is, of course, to start executing, so a plan. And this is what is currently missing in the market. So I wouldn't say that it's fully mature, but I would say that it's on the right track. We have been seeing promising, initiatives, programs regarding retrofitting, and I'm sure we're gonna hear about that today. But while most think that net zero is achievable entirely with some basic retrofitting and renewable, it's very important to note that energy efficiency is key. It's an important step that is sometimes overlooked, and talking from my experience and from my building science background, for me, energy efficiency equals to deep retrofitting, especially in UAE, because a big part of the building stock was built before the regulation, so with no or poor insulation. So the biggest challenge is the need for the industry stakeholders to go further into retrofitting, and not only target easy tasks and quick wins. Also, it's important to have everybody engaged and committed to the long-term sustainability goal. This is why carbon neutrality is at the core of our group strategy, and everyone should join the movement because we definitely need a joint effort to accelerate this shift.
Absolutely great. It's fantastic to hear such positive feedback from every one of the panelists here. It's really great to see that, yes, we are taking a step in the right direction. There is more work to be done, but at the same time, there is much to be achieved. So with that in mind, Graham, I'm going to move on to a next question for you. So we've seen very impressive achievements from the Dubai Site Management Retrofit Program, which has contributed to about 6% of the total energy savings and 2.5% of the total water savings in 2019. So what are the challenges from moving to where we are now to evolving the ESCO market in the UAE?
Well, let me focus on Dubai in my response. I'd identify a couple. I mean, one is illustrated by the figures you quoted. We don't seem yet to have been as effective in implementing water-saving measures as we have energy-saving measures. And I think there is some entirely understandable reasons for that. Some of it's to do with the relative pricing of energy and water, and some of it's to do with the sort of complexity around water-saving measures and the nature of those measures. But that's a nut I think we have to try and crack. And the second challenge, I think, is one which was highlighted by the survey of ESCOs, or the ESCO market that CBC carried out last year, which interestingly said that the ESCOs seem to no longer think that financing was a challenge, whereas I think if they'd been surveyed some years earlier, they would have said financing was really the key issue. Instead, I think they were identifying the development and the difficulty in getting projects over the line, a sort of a long developmental process. And I think if we can find ways to simplify that project development process, make it more straightforward, make it more akin to the process of developing solar PV projects, which I think are much more straightforward. Then I think we'd have a market that that would get closer to exploring its full potential, and that's Dubai. I think the other Emirates have made great progress recently. I think pricing is probably more of an issue in some of the other Emirates than it is in Dubai, where we have got, comparatively speaking, I think economic certainly for the larger customers. So I'd identify those two challenges really around water and really getting simplification in the process of getting projects developed and delivered.
Great, that's really interesting to hear as well, and it's great to see that even within our sort of report, if you read the report and the sort of findings that we came across as well, from the ESCO sides, very few of them actually answered that the tariff rates are an issue. So that was really interesting to see within our survey results as well. Fantastic. So Afra, with moving on to a different Emirate, so can you share with us and the audience the challenges and opportunities you are seeing with retrofit market in Sharjah, and how is Siwa leading the way to improving building performance?
Thank you. Firstly, for the people who don't know what we do in Sharjah as retrofit market, so in Siwa, we qualify ESCOs, we look at the latest technology, and we retrofit our facilities as Siwa, and we facilitate customer retrofit projects. So the first thing that we do is when we handle any project, we understand the purpose of the project and the motives and how we attract the interest of our customer. And then how can we maximize its benefit? So when we bring all the stakeholders together, so the ESCOs, the customer, and for us as a utility who facilitate the project, we try to maximize the benefits to keep the customer attractive and convinced toward investing in this project. So this is considered as a challenge. That the deep retrofit, of course, will require a higher investment, and the customer shall be aware and looked at the benefit and convinced into investing in such a project. How? By looking at the opportunities and the benefit that he will get out of this project. That, for example, the building will be more sustainable and he gonna get higher saving instead of a simple retrofit. So in my opinion, yeah, actually, these are the challenges and opportunities that we are facing in Sharjah. Of course, it's a learning journey for all the stakeholders, and there is no one way for us to say that this is the only, because we are the government, this is the only way that we should follow. We are always learning from each other, from all the stakeholders together. In that strong, collaboration, we will reach really to achieve the vision of the UAE.
Fantastic, and I like that point that you had raised, that there's no one simple solution to meeting the requirements. Just as how we mentioned within the deep retrofit definition, wherever it's feasible that you should try to achieve that 50% reduction, but obviously not all typologies, not all buildings, it would be appropriate to do so. Sometimes the expenses are just going to be too much compared to the savings that you're going to get. So moving on from that sort of one solution sort of idea, so Ismail, this is a question from you. So we know that deep retrofits aim for 50% reduction in baseline site energy usage. So while the cooling loads are the highest consumers in the UAE buildings, it's unlikely that that would only result in a 50% reduction. So in some cases it might, but in most of the times it might not. So what advice would you give clients in pushing towards a 50% improvement?
50%, of course, it's quite a substantial number, and anyone you would offer a 50% savings, I think it would just take his attention immediately. I mean, it's also for our personal use. If somebody would tell me that I could reduce my Diva bill 50%. Wow, I would tell me the secret. I would tell to him, or my own consumption of the car. So for buildings, if we are talking about a big hotel, let's say in Marina, if a big hotel we are talking about, but that they would be paying 2 to 3 million dirham just the cooling bill for a year. Half of it is a really substantial number for them. It is eventually possible to reach the 50% level. It's of course, as Danfoss, they are not on all the part of the HVAC system. However, there is a collaboration between the companies, and we observed so far really. Yes, we believe that maybe it was not intentionally, but something has been missed. Maintenance has been missed. I mean, to clean, to treat the water of the treat the chill water, cleaning the heat exchangers. So that just made the system more less efficient. They, from the beginning in the investment time, and when they are building, they just put bigger pumps than they are supposed to be. They didn't have the right equipment, or they didn't have the up-to-date equipment. So if all these parts and elements added to each other, eventually wouldn't be so a big surprise to reduce the energy to 50%. It's not, of course, not for all the buildings. I mean, doesn't necessarily, all buildings might be missing doing the right things, but starting with 20% and then using the right equipment and the right methodology is making it to reach to 50%. Again, I will refer to groundworks here. Yes, some of them is just so easy. In some, for instance, district energy, it is easier to implement software, estimation software, peak load control softwares. Then accordingly, it is possible to reach immediately. Just a software update can give you 10–15% savings. Or in a building, just reducing the thermostat settings or increasing the temperature, and 1–2 degrees can give you like 5% total savings for the common area. So there are simple steps, but then you can push a little bit more, you can achieve a little bit more, but then it comes to the calculation. Does it work or not? We know very well when we make these calculations in Europe, it works easier because energy costs are higher than here. Even, I mean, there are countries in Europe that you have to give an energy tag to your apartment, A plus, B plus. When you're renting it, before you rent it, you have to provide this information. And I mean, for these buildings, there is a motivation. Energy prices can be lower here, but it's not free. We all know that. So it's all about the financial calculation. And I didn't see any building so far. I will just push my memory, but no, I didn't see any buildings which are more than 10 years old, and you cannot offer them simply 30% energy saving with on the HVAC systems. And it is with just simple change, and more of it to come if you push it a little bit more. You dare to take a little bit of challenge across the building. And this is, please mind that this is only for the HVAC part. Obviously, there is the electricity consumption of the rest of the building. There is heat losses, domestic water consumption. There are much more areas to do the retrofit.
Absolutely, I completely agree.
Sorry, yeah. As a conclusion, I would say 50% is not a dream at all. It just has to be evaluated carefully. Doesn't necessarily for all buildings, but it's not a daydream.
Absolutely, and I think your earlier statement as well is just about finding the Lego pieces that fit in together to make sure that all the elements sort of align really well, that you can really achieve the highest savings possible. And Graham had mentioned it as well, with certain typology in certain buildings, district cooling might be the option. So it really depends on a case-to-case basis, and is not really the simple one solution is going to be achievable for all buildings. It's not feasible. So let's move on to an interesting question for Nada, actually, and very rarely do we see retrofits looking at replacing the insulation of facades. Like I've never seen it happen personally as well, and it's very difficult to find case studies that do it here in the region as well. So while there is considerable investment required for that, the return on investment can also be quite attractive, especially the older the building gets, pre regulations or pre green building regulations. So what do you think is necessary to change people's perception in looking at retrofits to include these sort of measures?
So thank you, Jason, for this question. It's true that facade retrofitting may represent, an initial financial challenge, but I think that the long-term value of facade retrofitting surpasses the initial cost, and that has been demonstrated, in many case studies in the literature. More importantly, when you take as a baseline a non-insulated building with very harsh climatic conditions, such as UAE. So we are sure that it brings, huge financial benefits to a building's operation, and there is a considerable, cost saving achieved in the long run. So what can we change, in the people's perception? First, they need to be aware that beyond aesthetics, facade is built to last 50 years. So the building envelope quality is key, to deliver sustainable performance. So for me, retrofitting facade will provide an opportunity to enhance, the durability, the adaptability, the resilience of the building, in addition, of course, to increasing the commercial value. One more thing to add as well is that retrofitting the facade will drastically improve the health and well-being of the occupants. For example, having poor performing walls and roof with thermal bridges will generate, high cooling demand, but also thermal discomfort. Poor performing glazing will generate, solar absorption and will have glare. Poor facade construction, for example, will leak air, pollutants, heat, and humidity indoor. So renovating the facade through a smart and well-thought design and having a good quality execution will improve, the air tightness and the performance for more than 50 years. So for the next 50 years. It will also provide, thermal comfort, acoustic comfort, indoor air comfort, which is very important to our health and well-being, and as well as our productivity, and efficiency. So renovating the facade is very important. And also what needs to be changed is that we need to have these people know these benefits generated. And this, of course, is achieved through trainings, but also more importantly, through ESCO's guidance, in proposing and having these deep retrofitting measures targeting facade proposed for the project. And lastly, so we also understand that it's important to have a successful real case studies, like Nazli said. So this is why we partnered with the UID in order to conduct a research, a study, on real buildings in UAE, and demonstrate, energy efficiency, cost savings, return on investment, but also the sustainable impact, of deep retrofitting, and more importantly, targeting the facade. And of course, we will be sharing the findings of these studies once we finish next year.
That's very exciting to hear. And I think that you touched upon a very important point, Nada, is we tend to look at retrofits in terms of just the financing and the investment side of things, but there's also to bear in mind the human aspect of doing this in the first place. We are doing this also to improve the productivity, the health, and the well-being of the occupants. So it's also important to really keep that in mind for retrofits. So thank you for sharing that point as well. And Nazli, let's move on to related questions where you, as Majid Al Futtaim, you control a number of assets across the region. And you had mentioned this as well, that you would like to see some sort of incentives, or like from the government side, from the supplier side. So in your experience, what can you suggest examples, financial or non-financial, of best practices that you would like to see here in the UAE?
Thank you, Jason. So as I said previously, and you just mentioned, I think governmental support and financial support are very important. I really hope to see more green loans and green bonds in UAE. But as Majid Al Futtaim, we operate in 16 countries across the region. And since 2017, when we launched our net positive commitment, we've been looking at retrofitting in a more structured manner. Even though I have to say, unfortunately, Nada, we haven't been looking at retrofitting the walls or roof, but maybe this is something that we should start looking at. So we've been more focused on equipments, on HVAC, on refrigerants, etc. And we carried out audits for all our assets in 2017 and 18 to identify what improvement we can do. We did all the low-hanging fruits, and now we are looking at other items, for example, like optimization of HVAC system. This is something that we are looking to start doing from 2021 across all our assets. Something else that, as an example, in our Carrefour business, we are looking to do is a replacement of refrigerant with CO2, with natural refrigerant. We piloted in my city center master in 2019, and actually the case study that came out of it was a great success. And as a result of that case study, we are looking to roll it out across our assets from 2021, starting with UAE. In our hotels with Innova and Siemens, we have started actually this year. We started retrofitting all of our hotels in UAE, and I think in Q4 we start doing it in Bahrain. At the same time, we are updating our sustainable fit-out policy to make sure that it includes mandatory requirements for retrofitting in line with our target for net positive. So that's all from me.
Well, that's a great number of initiatives that we are seeing, and it's great to see the commitment of Majid Al Futtaim for being net positive. I think that's something that's been echoed across throughout this webinar, as well as from our panelists, is you do need commitment to sustainability. You do need to start working towards a decarbonized future to make it happen. So with that, I will open up the floor to audience questions. So we have quite a few number of questions that were asked, and we had suggested that we'd wait until the panel questions to ask them. So let's see. So the first question we have is from Mr. Raja on the what sort of incentives from the private sector would you like to see? So this is maybe, I'm guessing, more along the lines for the suppliers and manufacturers sort of line of thinking. So Nada and Ismail, if you have any comments or examples of incentives from your side? Hello?
Yeah, so I didn't understand, Jason. So incentive from, the supplier's point of view, because our product will provide energy saving. So for example, energy saving, comfort, I see the government providing incentives or, green funding for the project. But in terms of product and solution, what we can help is, with helping with the design, helping study the building, diagnosing, what's the issue, what's the problem. It could be, external retrofitting, also internal retrofitting. But the advantages is really in terms of, providing, lowering the embodied carbon of the building, because you're using sustainable products and providing energy savings, which will, at the long run, have exciting return on investment. So
great, fantastic. We have another question. Yeah, go ahead, Ismail. Sorry.
Yeah, I would agree with that here that the suppliers mostly offering the calculations and what benefits can be got, and then some technical background or startup information for the project. So that could be considered as incentives. But also, please remember there are lots of companies in the market who would offer actually zero investment retrofits, which is the ESCO model. So any entity who's interested in having a deep retrofit in his building can agree with the companies that are offering zero investment from the building owner. So that's also possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. We have another question. I believe, Graham, you might be the most appropriate one to answer this one. So we have this question from Mizan, who asks, I'm going to summarize it quite a lot because it's quite a long one. But is there any plan or strategy to improve ESCOs and super ESCO services and expertise? And also, is there any sort of strategy to increase the number of qualified ESCOs to sort of drive deep retrofits?
Well, I've never really thought that the ESCO market was a numbers game, in the sense of we needed many more ESCOs than we have. In fact, I had a meeting not long ago with one of the people who's responsible for the IP MVP, and Dubai already has more ESCOs than Canada does. So I think it's not so much about the number of ESCOs we have. I do think it's about the depth of their capability. And I think Dubai has been pretty successful in attracting large, well-resourced companies. And an interesting development of the last few years has been that companies that are not traditionally associated with the ESCO market have entered that market. They come from maybe a construction or a facility management background. And they bring with them, I guess, the depth of technical expertise and, where necessary, the financial capability. So for me, that's really been, and I think we all know who some of those companies are, and some of the international ESCOs are able to bring with them proprietary technology as well. So I think that's the key to unlocking a deeper ESCO market in Dubai, with Etihad as well playing a very significant role, because I think they've been able to create such large projects. That's really attracted the interest of these larger entities who are interested in doing projects that cost millions and millions of dirhams, not hundreds of thousands of dirhams.
Interesting. Yeah, I also like to think that it's not about the number of ESCOs, as you had mentioned, but it's more about the technical depth. And one of the findings from the report that we had was, while the survey respondents think that there is enough technologies available in the market, it's more along the qualifications of the current market that needs to be improved. So moving on from that, and after, maybe you can also sort of help answer these questions. We have a question which basically asks, do you think we can have a unified federal retrofit guidelines in the UAE? So something similar to Green Star system in Australia. And how do you think which would be like a federal body to manage that sort of system?
In my opinion, merging the local strategies with the federal level country vision is essential, regardless the way, regardless the practice, because the idea is that we can duplicate the best practices around the Emirates and share the knowledge and experience. So you will see a variance between each Emirates in the type of the program, ESCOs registered, the type of projects, the number of projects as well, and different schemes, So if we, bring everything together, we share everything together, we put like one strategy that everyone should follow. for me, I don't like to stick with one way, with one standard, with one policy. The idea is that we should share the knowledge to each other, and we should collaborate in order to reach to an advanced level. Of course, this will allow us to go towards also the zero carbon buildings. Yeah, so I don't have, and I don't believe in one specific way. I always think that knowledge sharing, go to the best practices, learning from each other is the way that we take it forward.
Absolutely, that's a fantastic answer. Thank you, Afra, for that. And Nadia, I'm just going to bring back one. This is the final question that we'll have for today's session. So this is a question that was asked earlier, so I'm just going to bring it back on incentives for landlords and moving beyond landlords. I would say in terms of tenants as well, because as Majid Al Futtaim, you have a wide variety of tenants in your malls as well. So what sort of like incentives or sort of financial or even non-financial things that you can help bring and make sure that the tenants understand to pursue deep retrofits?
So I think it's important to have engagement with tenants, to include them in consultations, in knowledge sharing about retrofitting and how it can affect them. For example, their health and well-being, or the fact that they are going to pay less for their utilities. I mean, everyone appreciates that. So I think if we had more case studies that we could share with everyone, it would help a lot. It would accelerate what we are doing exceedingly.
Great. I think that's something for us as EmiratesGBC to keep in mind as well going forwards. So once again, I would like to thank each and every one of our panelists today for your time and your efforts in joining us and giving us your experience and insights on the retrofit market, as well as the challenges and opportunities that you see. So thank each and every one of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
All right, so that's all we have time for today. The EmiratesGBC team will be sharing the link with all the attendees today, as well as the recording of the webinar later on today. We do hope that you will all go online and check up the publication and read it for yourself in more detail to understand what all has been represented and shown today. And finally, on behalf of EmiratesGBC, I would once again like to thank our publication sponsors, Danfoss, Majid Al Futtaim, and Saint Gobain, for supporting the work of EmiratesGBC. So with that, I wish everyone a good day and thank you for attending. Goodbye.